Crews battled thick smoke and flames at a home in the West End last night. The blaze leaving one man fighting for his life in hospital. Good afternoon. One person is in critical condition and another seriously injured after a house fire last night.
The cause of the blaze is under investigation. CTV's John Musselman is live at the scene with more. John.
Well, Sean, I can tell you the Ontario Fire Marshal is here. Toronto Fire and Toronto Police are all inside the home at the moment investigating this to try to determine how it started. The fire broke out around 9:45 last night at this home near Oakwood Avenue in St. Clair. There was heavy smoke and flames visible when firefighters arrived on the scene. A person was rescued from the home while a number of other people were able to get out safely. A man is in critical condition and a woman suffered serious injuries.
I looked out the window on the third floor and I saw smoke billowing out from the corner there and lots of lights. Fire trucks, I think maybe even ambulance, police probably. I had heard the sirens before, but you know, you hear them and you just ignore them. But there was just so much and my dog was just so agitated. So eventually I thought, yeah, there's something happening nearby.
Neighbors say the home is divided into multiple residences for people struggling with mental health or addictions. It is privately owned. At this point, the cause of the fire remains under investigation. And in the last hour, we've noticed police remove about 3 or 4 bags of evidence material from inside the home. We don't know how that is related to this at all. Again, the Ontario Fire Marshal is in control of this scene right now, and it will be up to them to try to determine how it started. Reporting live at the scene, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, John. Toronto police are searching for suspects in robberies at 2 businesses. One of the businesses that was hit is a jewelry store on Dundas, just east of Yonge Street. Officers responded to the scene around 7:45 yesterday evening after an alarm went off. Police say some merchandise was stolen before the suspects got away in a vehicle. And a cell phone store was robbed at the East York Town Centre shortly after 7:30 last night. 3 masked robbers entered the mall with hammers and began smashing display cases before stealing items. No injuries were reported in either robbery.
An SIU report is revealing new details about how a Toronto police officer was shot by a suspect in an underground parking garage in Midtown back in October. The report was commissioned because another officer fired his weapon at the suspect after the first officer was shot. The SIU says the 2 plainclothes officers were in the garage investigating a stolen vehicle when 2 men approached. One of the suspects surrendered to police while the other tried to flee. The second suspect had a gun on him, and while the officer and suspect struggled on the ground, he reached for the gun and shot the officer in the stomach. Both suspects were eventually taken into custody. 21-year-old Tibor Organa is charged with attempted murder. The Hamilton Wentworth District School Board says it's responding to a potential cyber incident. The board sent a letter to families Thursday afternoon saying it was temporarily shutting down its website, phones, and email out of an abundance of caution as it responds. But board officials say all schools remain open and transportation is continuing as usual with educational activities relying on offline methods. That's with the exception of the elementary remote learning, which is paused until the situation is resolved, although the board hasn't estimated when that will be.
And still to come, the latest on the investigation into the mid-air collision between an American Airlines flight and a military helicopter in Washington that claimed 67 lives. Those details a little later in the newscast.
More news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. Quite a bit more mild than we would expect. Let's send things over to Jessica Smith, who's got a look at the current conditions. Jessica.
Hey, Sean. Well, I'm 38 floors above ground level right now. We're getting ready to talk about Winterlicious, but first your forecast. And you're right, it is relatively mild outside. We've seen a bit of a resurgence of some of this warmth, but get ready to do weather whiplash over the next couple of days. We have seen a little messy weather to kick the morning off. That's that Texas low sitting south of the border, but temperatures right across southern Ontario, relatively mild. We're sitting well above seasonal, in and around that kind of 1 to 2 degree range, a little cooler the further east you go. Through the islands, really cloudy. You can see that from here. We're at Era in the well, 38 floors above ground level, and you can see over towards Pearson as well from here, and we're looking at cloud cover for everyone. We're not done with the chance of active weather just yet thanks to that Texas low, but as we head into the day tomorrow, it gets a whole lot sunnier but definitely colder as we see a bit of a dip in the jet stream. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long range forecast. For now, I'll send it back inside.
Thanks, Jess. We'll turn now to day 3 of the provincial election campaign.
Today, party leaders are in and around the GTA and Southwestern Ontario. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has more on the campaign trail. Siobhan?
Well, a variety of issues to start this day of campaigning. We saw NDP leader Marit Stiles in Windsor speaking to auto workers represented by Unifor. The message there is really that Marit Stiles says she has the backs of these workers in the threat of incoming tariffs from the U.S. that could take effect as early as tomorrow, so just a few hours away. In Toronto, we heard from Bonnie Crombie, the Liberal leader, offering more support for the TTC and other transit agencies as well to make those transit systems safer. One of the big promises was to add platform-level doors, something that, of course, has been debated in Toronto for years now. Here's more of what we heard from those leaders this morning.
We would invest in 300 new constables. Secondly, we would train up more response teams, mobile crisis response teams that are equipped to responding to people with mental health crises. Thirdly, and simply, investment in more cameras and safety equipment.
To make sure that we weather this storm that's coming, we're going to take care of people through actions that are going to secure you and your family, like income protection. We're going to do whatever we need to help you and to keep people working and able to pay the bills.
Now, Green Party leader Mike Schreiner is spending the day in Chesley, Ontario, focused on healthcare. The community hospital there has struggled with staffing and keeping the doors of all its departments open for many years now. PC leader Doug Ford started his day in a Hamilton meeting with healthcare workers there. He's transitioning now to Niagara. This afternoon, he'll make an announcement in Niagara Falls, where he'll be endorsed by 3 local mayors. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Back to you.
Thanks, Siobhan. We'll move now to the battle over the budget at Toronto City Hall.
The mayor has finalized her financial plan to present to council, but not without opposition. CTV's Mike Walker has that story.
Amid financial challenges at City Hall,
tough choice have to be made as we continue to climb out a decade of neglect.
The mayor's version of the budget remains largely unchanged from what was first proposed. Olivia Chow opting to keep the 6.9% tax hike.
We cannot balance a budget on the backs of cuts to the city services people relied on.
The hike includes a 5.4% property tax increase plus a 1.5% increase for the city's building fund. For the average homeowner, the total annual increase is $268.
That's a big jump. Things are expensive, everything, groceries, cost of living, for your mortgage.
Lots of things, services, I think are not the same quality as if they want to increase the tax. Of course, they have to show that it's justifiable.
But following consultations, the mayor making some amendments expanding eligibility for property tax deferrals and cancellations for seniors and people living with disabilities.
We are increasing the threshold by 5% for this relief to $60,000.
The spending plan includes enhancements to community services from emergency response to extended library hours, as well as school meal programs, an increase to TTC service plus a fare freeze, and enhanced protections for renters and building more affordable housing.
We've taken $400 million that was originally going to go to the Gardner, and we're giving it to Toronto Community Housing to improve our housing stock.
The story of this budget this year is you are paying more and getting less.
Critics argue the tax hike is too high.
The mayor continues to push a tax increase that is triple the rate of inflation on Torontonians who are really struggling to get by right now.
But the mayor notes well over $600 million in reductions and offsets were found.
We started with $1.2 billion shortfall. Money doesn't come from the sky. It has to come from somewhere.
Aside from concerns over the tax hike, the Toronto Youth Cabinet says this budget fails to deliver on creating youth employment opportunities that are needed.
The budget proposes $339,000 for additional youth jobs, and that's only going to employ 8 young people, and that's for the Indigenous Youth Fellowship. So we're calling for a $17.5 million investment for youth employment to hire 4,500 young people.
City councillors will review the budget and have an opportunity to propose amendments at a council meeting on February 11th. Mike Walker, CTV News.
More than 40 bodies have been recovered from the Potomac River as the recovery and investigation into the worst aviation disaster in nearly a quarter century ramps up.
CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin is at the crash site and has the latest on the recovery effort.
Divers are expected to work with NTSB investigators today on the icy water here of the Potomac River because they really want to piece together exactly what happened. They want to find parts of the plane, parts of the helicopter, and they want to be able to examine all of this information. We do know that they have retrieved the black boxes from the plane. They want to understand what was going on within the cockpits, both of that plane and of the helicopter. There's one piece of information thereafter, particularly as we understand it, is that they want to try to understand at what altitude exactly the helicopter was flying at, and if it was flying too high. There are set paths here. This is a very congested travel hub. The helicopter is supposed to be flying at a certain altitude. It appears as though there are reports it was flying higher than that. If so, why? How did this happen? And also they want to understand what was going on when the control tower was talking to the pilots. The control tower, we've heard over the past couple of days, was asking, do you see the CRJ-700? The pilots from the helicopter seemed to answer yes, but it's not clear what exactly they were looking at. Is it possible that they were looking at a separate plane and did not actually see that CRJ-700? That's all part of the investigation here, and they're hoping that this will be pieces of information, key pieces of information that they can gather. We do know that the NTSB has said that it will take months and months and months to complete this investigation, but they're hoping to have a preliminary report within 30 days. For CTV News, it's Geneviève Beauchemin here near Reagan National Airport.
Of the 64 people on the American Airlines flight, at least 14 were figure skaters returning from the National Figure Skating Championships in Wichita, the loss hitting the figure skating community hard.
CTV's Janice Golding spoke to members of a skating club in North York about the impact of this loss.
The video is chilling. You're watching the moment a passenger flight collides with a Black Hawk military helicopter.
We have been told that there are no survivors. We mourn with all those who have been impacted.
64 dead, among them 14 elite figure skaters en route home from a training camp in Wichita, Kansas. 6 of the victims affiliated with the Skating Club of Boston.
These kids and their parents, they're here at our facility in Norwood 6, sometimes 7 days a week. It's a close, tight bond, and I think for all of us, we have lost family.
The skaters, identified as Jenna Hahn and Spencer Lane, along with their moms Christine Lane and Jin Hahn, also killed former Russian world champions, coaches Eugenia Shishkova and Vadim Naumov. Olympians Brian Orser and Tracy Wilson are training the next generation of world-class skaters.
We know some of the coaches.
They describe the sorrow all in the tightly knit skating community are experiencing.
The kids that we train here who were closely affected because they've skated with some of them have skated side by side with them from skating clubs in Virginia or Boston.
It's tough. It's tough. And so, you know, we're just here for them and kind of going through it with them, and they have their friends here. And of course, we're all thinking about the families.
Back at the Skating Club of Boston's facility in the rink that bears her name, Olympian Tenley Albright reflected on the loss.
I really can't believe that it happened, because I picture them right here. The skaters just flew all over the ice doing remarkable things.
Not sure how to process it. Oh shoot, I'm sorry.
No.
Which is why I'm here. Anytime I've been able to be here and watch them grow, the kids here really work hard. Their parents work hard to be here.
Meanwhile, at the White House, the president reflected on the tragedy.
I speak to you this morning in an hour of anguish for our nation.
Asking for a moment of silence to pay respect to all those lost in the crash.
What I've seen so far, do I think this was preventable? Absolutely.
An accident, the transportation secretary says, should never have happened. Janice Golding, CTV News.
In an effort to avoid U.S. tariffs, Canada has moved to address the U.S. president's border concerns. As part of that effort, the RCMP will soon start patrolling the U.S.-Quebec border in a helicopter.
The reality of the geography of the border makes it difficult sometimes to get to where the call for services or the operation is. So this tool will afford us greater flexibility, and obviously we'll get there more quickly, more rapidly.
The Mounties recently acquired 2 Blackhawks. One of them will be based in Ottawa, allowing the RCMP to quickly deploy officers where they're needed along the 800-kilometer stretch of the border. The new helicopter can also be called to patrol New Brunswick if needed. The other Blackhawk helicopter will be based in Manitoba. CTV's Camille Karamali is standing by with the latest on these tariffs. Now, Camille, what is the latest on the tariff front?
Sean, we know that the tariffs could start as early as tomorrow, according to U.S. President Donald Trump, and they would begin at 25%. But he's also said they may or may not increase over time. When asked about oil exports as well and imports, if they would be tariffed, he responded with, "We may or may not," leaving a lot up in the air, saying that it depends on how Canada and Mexico respond. The conditions that the U.S. has placed is that they want to reduce illegal migration from Canada and reduce the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. What you're seeing on your screen here right now is the value of the two-way trade each day between Canada and the U.S. That's at $3.6 billion. And if you look at what happens annually in terms of trade between Canada and the U.S., that's at $1.3 trillion with a T. So a lot on the line here. And we're not even mentioning American jobs yet. 1.4 million American jobs are supported by exports to Canada as well, Sean. So a lot on the line, and that would impact a lot of Canadians and Americans in terms of their wallets when it comes from anything from the price of gasoline to grocery bills for Americans and Canadians. So a lot of people have tomorrow circled on their calendar, Sean, just waiting to see how Trump and Trudeau respond.
So as this looks possibly more and more real, you mentioned Trudeau there, has there been a Canadian reaction?
Yeah, we have Trudeau's cabinet ministers, 3 of them in D.C. right now with a last-ditch effort to try and negotiate these tariffs being, or the promise of these tariffs being backtracked. Melanie Joly, David McGuinty, and Immigration Minister Mark Miller, all there right now. And we also know that Trudeau spoke earlier this morning at a meeting of the Canada-U.S. Council with some very strong words. Have a listen to a little bit of what he had to say.
Right now, we're showing the new American administration that they have a strong partner in Canada when it comes to upholding border security, all while simultaneously underscoring that we won't back down, that if tariffs are implemented against Canada, we will respond. We won't relent until tariffs are removed, and of course, everything is on the table.
And Sean, in response to Trump's conditions, Trudeau says that border is safe and that less than 1% of fentanyl in the U.S. actually comes from Canada. Once again, those tariffs could come as early as tomorrow. We'll wait and see. Back over to you.
All right, thank you very much. That's CTV's Kamal Karamali joining us.
More economic news now, and the federal government is deferring a hike to the capital gains inclusion rate. The implementation of the increase is being moved from June 25th of this year to January 1st of 2026. Ottawa says the deferral will provide certainty to Canadians as tax season approaches. There are also plans to introduce new exemptions to ensure most middle-class families do not pay more tax if the rate becomes official. The tax being deferred is meant to raise the portion of capital gains on which companies pay tax from 1/2 to 2/3. It would also apply to individuals with capital gains earnings above $250,000.
Meanwhile, one of the perceived frontrunners in the Liberal leadership race says he will scrap the carbon tax if he becomes Prime Minister.
It has had some impact in terms of reducing our emissions, making things more efficient. But as I said in my remarks, and I think certainly colleagues would know and people would know, it has become very divisive. For Canadians, it's the perceptions of the impact, the negative impacts of the carbon tax on households without fully recognizing the positive impacts of the rebate. has made this more of a divisive issue. It's been fed by misinformation and lies, quite frankly, by the leader of the opposition, but okay.
Mark Carney is suggesting an alternative to carbon pricing. He wants to reward people for greener choices. That would include financial incentives for purchases of more energy-efficient appliances and electric vehicles and improvements to home insulation. The former Bank of Canada governor said he would have big polluters help to cover the cost of those choices. There are now 5 candidates left in the leadership race after Jamie Baptiste announced he's no longer running. The Nova Scotia Liberal MP says the best way he can advance the issues he cares about is to support Carney. Baptiste was the only Indigenous candidate in the race and sought to put First Nations issues on the agenda during the contest. Those included reconciliation, the environment, and affordability.
In the Middle East, 3 more hostages being held by Hamas are scheduled to be released tomorrow. They are 65-year-old Keith Siegel, 54-year-old Ofer Caldron, and 35-year-old Yarden Bibas. Saturday's release will be the 4th since the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas began on January 19th. Israeli officials say around 80 hostages remain in Gaza. 33 are set to be freed during the first phase of the truce.
A Canadian national has been arrested in Japan on suspicion of trying to smuggle in hundreds of kilograms of methamphetamine. A 38-year-old company executive and resident of Yokohama was taken into custody yesterday. Police said the drug was hidden inside large industrial machinery and had been shipped in a container from the United States. Officers believe the suspect had unidentified accomplices and are still investigating. Jess?
Well, it's the last day of January, but the first day of Winterlicious. We're going to have more on both, but probably a good day to stay inside. Yes, it is a little milder out there, but we are looking at still the chance of some unsettled weather as a Texas low goes just south of us. There is sunshine on the way this weekend, but it comes at a price with a cool down. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, and we will talk more about Winterlicious and what you can expect in 2025. All those details after the break.
Welcome back. We are checking in with Jessica Smith, who's checking out Winterlicious, and Jessica, Pauline is going out to dinner tonight.
I'm hoping. I have my fingers crossed, so we want some suggestions and, what is the latest with Winterlicious this year?
Listen, Winterlicious is so much fun, and it's a great way to check out the different restaurants we have here in the city, and we're in one of the restaurants involved this year. We're here in Arrow. We'll have more on that in a moment, but I want to talk to Colin with the City of Toronto. Winterlicious is back. It's day 1. January, it feels like it's been, 84 days of January, but we're in the end of it now, and it's a great time to get out and check out our local restaurants. What can we expect this year for Winterlicious?
Yeah, it's great. We've got 26 new restaurants participating in the program this year. This is our 22nd year producing with the restaurant industry in Toronto. We're really excited about all of the menu options this year. A lot of curated menus. Prices are decent, $25 to $55 for lunch and $25 to $75 for dinner, all across the city from Scarborough to Etobicoke.
Listen, we love options, and there are some different options for people who are vegetarian, have different dietary restrictions. How important is it to you to include those things when it comes to making it accessible for everyone?
It's hugely acceptable and reasonable for people to be asking for, gluten-free and vegetarian and vegan menus, because it's what the public are asking for. And we work with our restaurants to make sure that those are part of the menu options.
Well, it's exciting. So Pauline back at the station has lots of options for dinner tonight.
She absolutely does, and we want her to come out and participate in the program.
So Pauline, we got options for you, but we're here in Arrow. We are 38 floors above ground level at King and Spadina inside the well. I'm joined by Bennett, the executive chef here, and I'll be honest, I was creeping in the kitchen earlier. You guys make some really, really great food, and in addition to the great view, you have really cool menu options. Talk to me about what you've made for us today and what it's like to be a part of Winterlicious.
For us, it's like, first of all, we are thrilled to be part of Winterlicious. This is our first year of being part of it. And it's been an honor to be part of such an incredible restaurant from Toronto. So Era basically is a modern steakhouse with a substantial sushi program, and I think that reflects in our Winterlicious offering. And I think with this view, 38-floor panoramic, I think it's going to be unforgettable. And, at this price point, I think it's amazing for all the guests. I think it's value for money. Incredible dishes, like we have made the roast chicken. It's a very simple dish, but we elevate it with our like, cooking techniques and how we can make a simple dish like really, really extraordinary. And that's Arise all about. Ingredient driven and a lot of love with cooking. And then it's very straightforward food. We let ingredients shine. Like the chicken is from Ontario, the potatoes are from Ontario, and the foie, but we use is from Quebec, so everything local, and just try to make best out of it, like the ingredients.
Listen, you had me at potatoes, to be perfectly honest. Thank you guys both so much for taking part in our chat today. And again, Winterlicious kicks off today. We go right through to February the 13th. We got lots of options for people, and I know when it comes to that bit of a deal on some of the prices, it still kind of carries through right through to the end of Winterlicious.
It does, and we also are taking advantage of the GST holiday. So extra bonus this year, so we encourage everyone to get out and enjoy the restaurants.
You had me at extra bonus. Well, thank you so much. And, today's not bad weather-wise, but we're talking about the forecast, too. And it's one of those days where maybe you want to come inside, eat inside, check out one of the many restaurants, and you can definitely do that. Weather is brought to you by the Presser Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. Now, it has been a relatively kind of mild start to the day, a little messy this morning. But if you're out this afternoon, the chance of active weather is going to linger just a little bit. Now, we're sitting at 2 degrees as our daytime high today. We should be at -2 for this time of year. A little bit of sunshine will peek through, but overall, it's overcast, and we're still watching for that chance of active weather from that Texas low. Now, it is mild today, but we'll see a dip in our jet stream as we head in towards the day tomorrow. And then it kind of rebounds. We do what I call weather whiplash over the next couple of days. Into this evening, we go from above seasonal to a little bit, closer to where we should be, but we're sitting at -12 this evening, feeling like -21 with that wind chill. And it is a wicked northerly wind, so keep that in mind. It is going to be quite cold. That active weather we saw this morning, a bit of wet snow, the bulk of it staying from Windsor right through to kind of around Halton region. It will push its way through as we head through the rest of our day today. And then tonight, temperatures drop, and we start to see some sunshine thanks to high pressure into the day tomorrow, but it comes at a price. It is going to be very cold. So we lose the rain and the messy mix, but we get the sunshine and the cold. We head through our evening tonight. Not bad if you're commuting in and around the GTA, but the further into that southwestern corner you go, the messier it is. Into the kickoff of your weekend, lots of sunshine out there, but I repeat, it is going to be cold, so layer up accordingly because frostbite can happen very quickly. Still a fairly moderate northerly wind. Now, getting into our Saturday evening, we stay really chilly, so keep that in mind. And then we're watching for another system, this one coming out of the prairies as we head into your Sunday, starting again from Windsor to London into Hamilton. And then for the GTA, east end of the city, this really rolls in as we head through the afternoon and evening. Not an all-day snow affair, but a good idea if you're traveling in that second half of the day to kind of keep that in mind. Now, weather whiplash, 2 degrees today, -9 tomorrow, +1 as we head in towards Groundhog Day. So just prepare for everything over the next couple of days because you're going to need the rain gear, the snow gear, maybe not a t-shirt and shorts, but just be prepared. I'll send things back to the studio.
Thanks, Jess. And if you're taking transit this weekend to a Winterlicious restaurant or anywhere else downtown, there is a major subway closure to keep in mind. Line 1 trains will stop running at 11 o'clock tonight between St. George and St. Andrews stations due to planned track work. Service won't resume until Monday morning. Shuttle buses will operate during tonight's closure, but not on Saturday or Sunday. The TTC is advising riders to use the young side of Line 1 where they can connect to surface routes.
NASA and the European Space Agency are keeping a close eye on a newly discovered asteroid. The asteroid is called 2024 YR4, and it was discovered on December 27th. It's still years away from coming close to Earth, about 7 actually. But NASA and the European Space Agency say this week that there is a tiny chance it could hit the Earth. CTV science and technology specialist Dan Riskin joins us now live. Dan, tell us about this asteroid and why it's suddenly on the radar.
Well, it missed us. We found out about it after it had gone by. It was just after Christmas, and we noticed this ball moving through space. And when we figured out the trajectory, okay, it's going away from us. But, space is not so much just a place where everything's sitting still and going in straight lines. Everything's going in circles. And so this thing moving away from us is going around the sun, and it's going in an orbit that, we're also going in an orbit. And so when you play the film forward, you can see that it's also going to come pretty close to us again in about 4 years. And then it's going to do it again. And on that next pass, 8 years from now, it might hit. And we're not totally sure what its trajectory is. And so we still need better data. And we're probably not going to get very much good data on, as it moves away from us. It's hurtling away from us, and it's only about maybe 100, 300 feet wide. So it's very hard to see at this point. But when it passes us in 4 years, around December of 2028, that's when we're going to get a much better look and get a better sense of what the real risk is. So right now they're saying, 1.3% chance that it'll hit the Earth in 8 years. But we'll know much better what the certainty is on that in 4 years.
And was there some new technology involved or something, or new stations that are looking up in the sky that allowed us to see this asteroid? Or how do we project, how its path will develop in the future?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it is all these telescopes that are pointed up in the sky. And a big piece of what's been happening in the last decade or so is all of these Starlink satellites that are providing internet service to remote communities that are blocking our view of the sky and making it very hard for things like this to be detected. And so our ability to see the sky, which is such a basic idea, is you don't want to have a zillion satellites in the way when you point a telescope up, is really endangered by this developing technology. But because we found this one, we can plan for it. And that's a real blessing, because if you get 8 years warning or even 4 years warning that we're in for something, you can ask yourself, okay, where's it going to hit? How big is the impact going to be? And is this the kind of thing that's going to wreck a house? Is it going to wreck a city? Or is it going to wipe us all off the planet? And based on the size of this, it's a city destroyer. This is not something that would destroy civilization. It wouldn't end humanity. But if we found out 4 years from now, as it does this close flyby and we get better data on its trajectory, if we realize, okay, on its next pass, it is going to hit the Earth, then we have a couple of options. One is to evacuate whatever city it's going to hit. We should be able to calculate that. That's not a great scenario. If it's going to hit the middle of the ocean, that's going to create tsunamis, so that's not great either. But the other thing is we just had this double asteroid redirect test that NASA did a couple years ago, where they showed we have the technology to bump these things and play a little bit of billiards. And so maybe the answer will be to give this thing a nudge so that it doesn't hit the Earth. And that would be just an amazing accomplishment and a real game changer in terms of how these things play out.
That's fascinating. So what do we do now between now and 2032? Is it going to be like Armageddon, the movie, where you have to send a crew and you got to try and plan how you're going to nudge that asteroid out of the way?
Yeah, well, okay, so yeah, we won't worry about sending Ben Affleck up anytime soon. Although I have to say, the theme song to that movie comes to mind, and it says, "I missed you, babe. I don't want to miss again." I just hope that's not the asteroid singing, because it did just miss us. But we would very much like it to miss again. That is what we want, is to have not, as much as I love that movie and I love the drama of it, that is not a scenario I want to see play out. And so, with any luck, it'll pass by. But I think what the real take-home message right now is everybody should chill out, because of very low probability, and we'll have lots of warning if that probability changes. But there are lots of things to worry about in the world right now, and this should not be on your list. Just don't even take it out of your mind. It's not a big deal.
Thanks so much, Dan Riskin, CTV science and technology expert.
Just keep Ben Affleck on standby, though. All right, coming up, Toronto Public Health warns that tuberculosis cases in the city have reached a level unseen since 2002. More on the warning from health experts after the break.
A follow-up now to a story we brought you earlier in the week. Downtown residents are sounding the alarm over an increased number of coyote sightings.
Every walk is just terrifying, because I have to be hyper alert all the time. Where are the two dogs? Where's my son? Looking all around my surroundings. So, and outside my condo, like, it's not like I'm going to the park or anything like that. It's just walking my son to school.
At least 2 dogs have died in recent coyote attacks. Deputy Mayor Asma Malik says she's pushing for increased patrols by animal services and other precautions, and we'll have more details on that story on CTV News at 5 and 6.
Toronto Public Health says cases of tuberculosis in the city rose to their highest level in more than 20 years in 2024. Officials tell CTV News there were 375 confirmed TB infections last year. That surpasses any annual total since 2002. Toronto's Associate Medical Officer of Health says the figure highlights the public health challenges associated with the disease, which spreads through the air. Symptoms include coughing, chest pains, and fever. Severe cases can be fatal, but TB can be treated with antibiotics. The disease is disproportionately affecting Indigenous communities and people who have lived or traveled in countries where it's common. Meanwhile, Public Health Ontario says there's been a positive shift in respiratory virus activity across the province. Officials published their latest update looking at the week of January 19th through the 25th. Less than 10% of COVID lab tests came back positive. That's considered a low rate of spread for the first time since late June. 9 people died of the virus during that time. RSV levels remained moderate and flu levels remained high, and nearly 1,500 Ontarians were admitted to hospital for the treatment of those viruses.
Some of the biggest names in music took to the stage last night to raise money for victims of the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles. The surviving members of Nirvana were joined by such musical heavyweights as Billie Eilish, Stevie Wonder, and at 2 fire aid concerts, one at the Intuit Dome and the other at the Kia Forum. Funds raised will be used to provide short-term relief for victims and to fund long-term efforts to prevent future fire disasters.
Toronto's own The Weeknd released his new album overnight, performing one of the songs on Jimmy Kimmel Live. That's the song Open Hearts, although fans also got a sneak preview of some of the other tracks during a show in Brazil a few months ago. The new album is called Hurry Up Tomorrow, and its release was delayed from last week due to the wildfires in Southern California. The Weeknd is also planning a new stadium tour across North America with shows at the Rogers Centre coming up in July.
It is critical, top of the pyramids, I am the pinnacle.
And that's a new track from Will Smith featuring Big Sean titled Beautiful Scars. It's one of the singles from Smith's upcoming new album, his first in more than 2 decades. The video shows Smith in an alternate reality where he chose to accept the lead role in the Matrix movies instead of starring in Wild Wild West. Smith's album, based on a true story, is set to drop in March.
The Grammy Awards are this weekend, and the list of stars taking part in the ceremony just got a bit longer. Taylor Swift is set to be one of the presenters at the show, where her album, The Tortured Poets Department, is also up for 6 trophies. Fellow nominees Sabrina Carpenter, Chappell Roan, and Billie Eilish are among the performers. Sunday's show will once again be hosted by Trevor Noah, and it will raise funds for California wildlife relief efforts. More news in just a moment.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Toronto stocks hit a record this morning, boosted by 2 technology names.
Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Toronto's composite stock index rose to a new record high this morning, north of 25,860. Once again, the benchmark was lifted by the e-commerce empire Shopify, but it was also juiced by a rise in Celestica, the maker of complex electronic assemblies for other companies, whose shares jumped to a new record high amid optimism over heavy spending on artificial intelligence equipment. CIBC upgraded the shares to buy. Gold miners also rose in Toronto as bullion hit a new record high, north of $2,820 US an ounce. 2 policies of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may be dead in the water as he prepares to step down. Both Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland, contenders for the Liberal leadership, have promised to replace the carbon tax with alternative climate measures. Carney says the carbon price has become, quote, too divisive. And Ottawa will defer the increase to the capital gains inclusion rate to January 2026 after the measure faced legal challenges and leading politicians, including former Finance Minister Freeland, disavowed it. Finally, Apple shares rose 4%. The company provided a reassuring revenue forecast for the current quarter, even though its holiday results showed declines in China and a drop in iPhone sales. In fact, the results renewed concerns about China, one of Apple's biggest markets, where the company has struggled to fend off competition from the local brands. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
Grocery industry experts say Canadians should brace for prices to increase as February gets underway tomorrow. The end of January typically marks the end of an annual industry-wide freeze on grocers on prices from suppliers. Experts say the freeze is a long-standing practice that helps stabilize prices during a time of year when consumers are more price sensitive. The grocery industry has come under a lot of scrutiny in recent years amid allegations that companies have unduly profited from inflation. Big chains have been pressured to implement a code of conduct to make negotiations between retailers and suppliers more fair.
We have an update now on the threat of U.S. tariffs against Canada. Reuters is reporting that President Donald Trump is expected to announce new tariffs that will begin on March 1st. But there will also be a process for Canada to seek specific exemptions for certain imports. However, a U.S. official said any exemptions would be, quote, few and far between. No decision is final until Trump makes a public announcement. He's scheduled to sign some executive orders this afternoon, but it is unclear if there will be anything related to tariffs. When a loved one dies, there are many issues to look after, including writing the obituary for a funeral home's website.
We recently had a story about a business that is reposting obituaries without permission and seeking money for memorial gifts. CTV's Pat Foran has that on Consumer Alert.
He loved his vacation.
When Paul Ross died in December, it was a shock for his family. They were also surprised to discover his obituary had been lifted from the funeral home website they used and reposted on one called Echo Vita. The website was also selling memorial trees and virtual candles in his memory.
I felt it was a huge violation.
I checked the website and looked for my father's obituary, and it was there.
Dan Reynolds of Aurora says his father, George, died in May of 2023. After our story, he checked the Echo Vita website and found his father's obituary. He says it had been changed and there were mistakes. He was also surprised memorial items were being sold in his father's name.
Found it to be quite offensive, and they were trying to solicit funds to light virtual candles or purchase gifts or plant trees.
Echo Vita told CTV News its mission is to make public information easily accessible free of charge and that it complies with Canadian laws. A spokesperson said, "We are sensitive to the wishes and requests made by friends and families of a deceased. It is possible for them to request changes to an obituary published on echovita.com or even publish the obituary themselves."
The biggest concern is taking advantage of those bereaved families.
The Funeral Service Association of Canada calls the practice obituary scraping or pirating. In 2019, a company called Afterlife was ordered to pay $20 million in a class action lawsuit for being in breach of copyright laws. The association says it's currently monitoring the situation, but feels there should be regulations in place to prevent it.
The complaints are actually heartbreaking. There's so much confusion. Which is the real obituary notice?
The funeral industry says the public needs to be aware of websites reposting obituaries. Reynolds plans to tell Echo Vita to take down his father's obituary.
But I will be reaching out and asking them to remove it, definitely.
Pat Foran, CTV News.
And coming up, the Toronto Argonauts made a special visit to the Sunnybrook Veterans Centre. We'll have details after the break.
Welcome back. Some Canadian heroes spent time with a cherished trophy recently.
The Grey Cup was on hand as the Toronto Argonauts paid a visit to the Sunnybrook Veterans Centre. The 75 veterans took part in a little ceremony yesterday. They met with Argo players past and present and took photos with the trophy that was won by Toronto in November. Some of the visitors also had a chance to address the veterans, talking with them about winning the Grey Cup and the journey to victory.
We came together and understood that it's team first, and whatever else last, our personal lives, we got to put that to the side for the greater good of the team, and everybody bought into that. The ups and downs you go through of a football season, as you guys definitely understand more than I do, is tough, and you gain brothers as you go through that.
The one thing that sticks with me is together everyone achieves more. The word team. That sticks with me. I learned that at the University of Michigan. I was taught that in high school, and then we echo the same message as we come and go along.
And the Argos will defend their Grey Cup title when the regular season gets underway in June.
Let's check back in with Jess Smith, who's talking about the weather, but she's so high up in that building. You're above the weather right now.
I'm honestly kind of right eye line with the clouds, which is pretty cool. It's a great vantage point to do the forecast as we make our way through the end of January, what has felt like a very long month. And as we step into the day tomorrow, we welcome in a brand new month, but the weather is going to do a bit of a shift. We see lots of sunshine, but it will be very, very cold. We're still watching that Texas low singing, kind of sitting just south of us, temperature-wise. It will impact us a little bit today. We are warming up a little bit before we cool down again tomorrow. Heading into the afternoon, it'll get a little warmer, but right now sitting at about 1. We'll see a daytime high around 2 degrees. Again, a generally cloudy day, still watching for the chance of some messy weather. But as we head into the evening, we see temperatures start to plummet. We go down to -12, and then as we get into the start of our weekend, lots of sunshine, but we stay below seasonal. We're holding on at a daytime high of just -9. We should be around -2 for this time of year. Heading into Sunday, Groundhog Day, we're at 1 apiece, start to finish, and then we do again that bit of a weather whiplash. We go up to 2 degrees for your Monday as we settle into February, and then back down to -4 on Tuesday. So layers are going to be key on and off over the next few days. I'll send things back inside.
Thanks, Jess. And that is CTV's News at Noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CV24 and at our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
And for Jessica Smith and all of us here, have a very pleasant afternoon. I'm Pauline Chan.
And I'm Sean Lee Thong. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6.